There are moments in a marriage when silence feels safer than speaking, when agreeing feels easier than arguing, when shrinking yourself becomes so natural, you forget you were ever bigger. I lived in that silence for 15 years. My name is Lydia Collins. And for most of my marriage, I was a ghost in my own life. It didn't start that way. When Ethan and I met, I was vibrant. I had opinions. I laughed loudly at restaurants. I stayed up late debating philosophy and politics with friends. I wanted things. I said things. I was someone. But somewhere between year 3 and year 5, I started disappearing. It was subtle at first. Small corrections, little comments that felt like paper cuts, tiny enough to ignore, frequent enough to scar. You don't need to worry about that, Lydia, I'll handle it. That's not really how it works. Let me explain it to you. I think you're misremembering. It happened like this. Every correction was delivered with patience, with a smile that said he was helping me, teaching me, guiding me toward being better. And I believed him. I started second-guessing myself. Before I spoke, I'd pause. I'd run my thoughts through a filter. Would this irritate him? Would he correct me? Would he sigh that particular sigh that made me feel like a child who'd colored outside the lines? So I stopped coloring altogether. I stopped suggesting restaurants, stopped planning weekends, stopped offering opinions on movies or books or anything that required me to have a perspective. I became agreeable, easy, low-maintenance. I became nothing. Our life together was efficient. Ethan made all the decisions. Where we lived, what we drove, how we spent money, what we did on vacation. He had opinions about everything, strong ones, and mine, when I dared to offer them, were always gently dismissed as impractical or uninformed. You don't understand how real estate works. Lydia, you're being emotional. Let's be logical about this. Trust me. I know what I'm doing, and I did trust him. Because what choice did I have? He handled the finances. He knew about investments and taxes and retirement accounts. I had stopped working after we got married. At his suggestion, he said it made sense. He earned enough for both of us. Why stress myself? At the time it felt like love, like he was taking care of me. Now I know it was control. Years passed. I filled my days with things that didn't matter. I joined a book club I didn't care about. I volunteered at places that didn't fulfill me. I kept the house spotless. I made dinners he liked. I laughed at his jokes. I agreed with his opinions. I was perfect. I was empty. And then something shifted. It was small. So small I almost didn't notice it. I was at the library, returning books I'd pretended to read, when I saw a flyer. Learn German, beginner classes starting soon. I stared at it for a long time. I used to love languages. In college, I'd minored in French. I dreamed of traveling Europe, speaking to locals, tasting words on my tongue that felt like small rebellions against the ordinary. But Ethan never wanted to travel abroad. Too expensive, too complicated, too much hassle. So I stopped dreaming about it, but standing there, looking at that flyer, something flickered inside me, a tiny ember of the person I used to be. I took the flyer home. I didn't tell Ethan. I enrolled in the class using money from my small personal account, the one he barely noticed because it only ever had a few $100s in it. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, while Ethan worked late, I went to the community center and learned German. And for the first time in over a decade, I felt like myself. Learning German wasn't just about the language. It was about having something that was mine, a secret, a pocket of solitude where Ethan's voice didn't reach, where I could be wrong, make mistakes, and it didn't matter because no one was judging me. I was terrible at first. My pronunciation was clumsy. My grammar was a disaster, but I kept going, week after week. I practiced in the car. I listened to German podcasts while cooking. I whispered words to myself in the shower. And slowly, I got better. By month 6, I could hold basic conversations. By month 9, I could understand films without subtitles. By the end of the year, I was nearly fluent, and still, Ethan had no idea. He never asked where I went on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I told him I was volunteering at a community garden. He nodded absently, already looking back at his phone. That should have hurt, but it didn't. It was proof that he didn't really see me. And somehow, that made it easier to keep my secret. I wasn't ready to share it yet. This small precious thing was mine, and I wanted to keep it that way just a little longer. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Saturday in October. Ethan had been talking about downsizing. Our house was too big, he said. Too much maintenance. He wanted something modern, sleek, a condo downtown. I hadn't been consulted. I'd been informed. We're viewing a place today. He said that morning. Get ready. We leave in an hour. I didn't ask questions. I just got ready. The condo was in a new development. Glass and steel, minimalist, cold, everything Ethan loved. The seller met us at the door. He was an older man, maybe 60, with silver hair and a kind smile. He extended his hand to Ethan. Then to me. Guten Tag, he said warmly. I am Klaus, nice to meet you, Ethan replied smoothly. This is my wife, Lydia. Klaus nodded politely at me, then switched to English as he began showing us around. His accent was thick but charming. He pointed out the features of the space. The high ceilings, the open floor plan, the view of the city. Ethan asked questions. About square footage, about HOA fees, about parking. I stood quietly, as I always did, my hands folded in front of me like a child waiting for permission to speak. Then Klaus's phone rang. He apologized, stepped aside, and took the call. He spoke in rapid German, something about a delivery delay. When he hung up, he looked at Ethan. Entschuldigung, he said. Sorry for the interruption. No problem, Ethan said. Then, almost casually, he added in German, Sprechen Sie Deutsch. Klaus's face lit up. Ja, Sie auch. Yeah, Ethan replied. I spent a year in Berlin for work. I loved the language. I stood there, my heart beginning to pound. Ethan had never mentioned this. Not once in 15 years. Klaus smiled. Wunderbar. It is rare to meet Americans who speak German. Ethan laughed. Then he glanced at me, as if checking that I was still standing there. I kept my face blank, neutral, the face I'd perfected over the years. Meine Frau spricht kein Deutsch, Ethan said to Klaus. My wife doesn't speak German. Klaus nodded, unbothered. Das ist in Ordnung. That's okay. And then Ethan said something that made my blood turn to ice. Sie muss nix verstehen. Ich bin derjenige der bezahlt. Ich bin derjenige der entscheidet. She doesn't need to understand anything. I'm the one paying. I'm the one deciding. The words hit me like a slap. Klaus looked momentarily uncomfortable but said nothing. He just nodded and continued the tour, switching back to English, but I couldn't hear him anymore. I couldn't hear anything except Ethan's voice echoing in my head. She doesn't need to understand anything. I'm the one paying. I'm the one deciding. I followed them through the rest of the condo in a daze. I smiled when Klaus smiled. I nodded when Ethan pointed at things. I played the role I'd been playing for 15 years, but inside, something had shattered. When we got back to the car, Ethan was in a good mood. That place was perfect, he said. I'm going to make an offer. Okay, I said quietly. You liked it, right? Sure. He didn't notice the flatness in my voice. He never did. That night, I lay awake next to him, staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying his words, over and over. She doesn't need to understand anything. For 15 years, I had told myself that Ethan loved me, that he was just particular, just practical, just trying to make our life easier, but now I knew the truth. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as an accessory, a decoration, something he maintained and managed but didn't value. I didn't cry. I was too numb for that. I just lay there, feeling the weight of all those years pressing down on me. The next morning, I made breakfast like I always did. Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, eating without looking up. I've been thinking, I said carefully. About what? He asked, still not looking at me. About the condo. What about it? I took a breath. I don't want to move now. He looked up. His expression was a mix of surprise and irritation. What do you mean, you don't want to move? I mean, I don't want to sell this house and move downtown. I like it here. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language, which in a way I had. This was the first time in years I disagreed with him outright. Lydia, he said slowly, we've already discussed this. The house is too big. The condo makes sense for you, for us no. Ethan, for you? His jaw tightened. What's gotten into you? I looked at him, really looked at him, and I felt nothing. No love, no anger, just clarity. I speak German, I said. He blinked. What? I speak German. I've been learning it for over a year. And yesterday, at the condo, I understood everything you said. The color drained from his face. Lydia, you told Klaus that I didn't need to understand anything. That you're the one paying. That you're the one deciding. That's not. Don't. My voice was steady, calm, stronger than I'd heard it in years. Don't try to explain it away. I heard you. I understood you. And now I understand everything. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once he had nothing to say. I've spent 15 years making myself smaller for you, I continued. I stopped having opinions, stopped having dreams. I became whatever you needed me to be. And I told myself it was love. But it wasn't, it was control. Lydia, you're being dramatic. No, I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in our entire marriage. He stood up, his face hardening. So what, you want to fight about this now? Over something I said in passing to a stranger? It wasn't in passing, Ethan. It's how you see me. How you've always seen me. As something you manage. Something you own. Not someone you respect. That's not fair, isn't it? We stood there. the silence stretching between us like a chasm that had always been there but I'd been too afraid to see. I want a divorce, I said. The words hung in the air. Final. Irreversible. Ethan stared at me. You don't mean that. I do. Lydia, you're upset. Let's talk about this. We are talking about it. And I'm done. His face shifted from shock to anger to something that looked almost like fear. You can't just leave. You have nothing. No job, no money. You need me. And there it was. The truth he'd been holding over me all along, whether he'd said it out loud or not. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd finally seen the cage they'd been living in. Then I guess I'll figure it out, I said. The next few months were hard. Harder than I'd imagined. I moved out, into a small, furnished apartment that smelled like someone else's life. I slept on a lumpy mattress and ate cheap meals and cried more than I thought possible. But I also felt lighter. I found a lawyer, a good one. I filed for divorce. Ethan fought it at first. He tried to convince me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret it, that I'd come crawling back. I didn't. During the settlement, I fought for what was mine. Half of everything. It wasn't about the money. It was about refusing to leave with nothing, like he expected. And then I started applying for jobs. I updated my resume. One included my German fluency. I applied to companies I'd never dreamed I was qualified for. And one of them called me back. It was an international firm that worked with German clients. They needed someone bilingual, someone who could translate, coordinate, communicate. I nailed the interview. I got the job, and it paid more than I'd ever imagined. When I received my first paycheck, I sat in my car and cried. Not sad tears, grateful ones. With my settlement and my new salary, I started looking for a place to live. Something that was mine, not ours. Not his. Mine. I found a small condo. Nothing fancy, but it had light, it had space, it had potential. I signed the papers myself. I held the keys in my hand and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. I painted the walls colors Ethan would have hated. Bright teal in the kitchen, warm gold in the bedroom. I bought furniture that didn't match. I hung art that made me smile. I made it mine. And slowly, I started building a life. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I drifted away from because Ethan found them annoying or too loud or too opinionated. I joined a hiking group. I took a pottery class. I traveled to Germany for work and spoke the language I'd learned in secret, and it felt like freedom. And then I met Julian. He was a colleague, quiet, kind. The first time we met, he asked me what I thought about something, not as a formality, but because he genuinely wanted to know. I almost didn't know how to answer. We started having coffee, then dinners, then long conversations that stretched into the night. He never interrupted me, never corrected me, never made me feel small. When I told him about Ethan, about everything I'd been through, he listened. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer advice. He just said, I'm glad you're here now. And I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. I still have moments when I doubt myself. When I hear Ethan's voice in my head, telling me I'm wrong or impractical or too emotional. But now I have my own voice, too. And it's louder. I think about that day in the condo a lot. The moment I heard Ethan's words in German. The moment everything became clear. It wasn't the language that changed me. It was the choice to learn it. The choice to keep something for myself. The choice to stop shrinking. And when he revealed who he really was, I had the strength to believe it. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't been in that room. If I hadn't understood those words, maybe I would have stayed. Maybe I would have kept disappearing until there was nothing left. But I did hear them. I did understand. And I chose myself. If you're reading this and something in my story feels familiar, I want you to know something. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining it. And you don't have to keep shrinking. It's terrifying to take up space after years of making yourself small. It's terrifying to speak after years of silence. It's terrifying to leave when leaving feels impossible. But it's also the most important thing you'll ever do, because you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to be whole. My name is Lydia Collins. And I am no longer a ghost in my own life. I am here. I am real. I am enough. And so are you.